guilty for saying no or worried that setting a boundary makes you selfish? Or maybe you found yourself drained because you put everyone else's needs first. Today, we're unpacking the myth that boundaries are selfish and showing how they're actually an act of self respect. If you ever struggled to put yourself first, this episode's for you.
Welcome back to Coaching Conversations. I'm Lourdes, a life coach, mindfulness teacher, committed to helping you unlock your potential and cultivate confidence and calm. Thanks so much for joining us. This is episode 1 of our Boundaries mini series. We're diving deep into what real healthy boundaries look like in work, relationships, and self care.
And I'm Maria Sabio. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and life coach, and I help you transform your life fast by combining ancient wisdom with modern psychology. And just a quick reminder, this podcast is supportive and educational. It's not a substitute for therapy or professional advice. So let's get into it.
Yes, let's start with the big one. Why do so many of us feel selfish for setting boundaries? For a lot of us, it goes back to childhood. Being praised for being good, helpful, or easy, we're we learn that saying yes equals love and saying no equals rejection or conflict. But here's the truth: boundaries aren't about shutting people out, they're about honoring your needs so you can show up as your best self. And you've heard it before, you can't pour from an empty cup. Boundaries are how you refill them.
Yes, and I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that we have this as a habit. This is how we stayed safe. This is how we, received love as children. This is how we stayed safe in the tribe. But it's a habit that we have. And also, we've gotten these rewards for being cooperative as children and even as adults. But we need to update that habit because we're paying a really big price for being cooperative, and we're we're not helping ourselves. We're building a lot of resentments, and we need to start letting go of those resentments and building these boundaries. And we're not talking about brick walls here. We're talking about being just flexible and having boundaries that protect us and also protect others.
Yeah, I mean, so many of us are in the habit of saying yes to things that are not a match, things that don't resonate, things that we really don't have the time or bandwidth to take on, and yet we overload our plates because we're afraid to say no because no feels like rejection, and it is something that we need to update, really look at with awareness and be like, okay, what is behind this? What is fueling this behavior? I have certainly been guilty, like many women and moms, to just sacrifice for others and put myself last on my list, and that is a recipe for disaster. Let me tell you.
Definitely, definitely. Healthy boundaries aren't just good for you, they're good for everyone around you. And when you set clear limits, you're less likely to feel, resentful, burned out, or, especially overwhelmed. You give others basically a roadmap for how to treat you, and you model self-respect for your children and for the people that are around you. You start allowing yourself to give yourself permission and others permission. It's not about controlling them. It's about being honest about what you need and what you can give. So the result that you would actually get is deeper, more authentic relationships with less drama and even with more trust.
Yeah, uh, So true. When we don't set boundaries, we open the door to feeling taken advantage of, and you know, this only builds resentment. And I can remember plenty of times when I said yes and I should have said no, or I took something on and it was just a weight on me, something more to manage that didn't really resonate. And so when we communicate clearly and honestly about something as simple as, this is a match, this is not a match, or I don't have the time for it, I don't have the bandwidth for it. We need to communicate that so that we don't find ourselves in a position of being full of resentment, but also so that people um, understand where we're coming from and what our boundaries are. Because without that, then you can find yourself in a position where people keep asking you for more, and they don't realize that really you're running on empty.
Right, right. And I like that you said that, because sometimes people can't tell that you're running on empty, right? Because you keep saying yes. And if we express our boundaries, we're also laying a foundation for clear communication with others. And we stop expecting, and we start expressing what works or what doesn't work. And that really allows us to not start, to not create additional resentments, and maybe even let go of some resentments that we have, because you're wondering, how is it that they don't realize that I'm overloaded, that I have way too many demands that I'm trying to handle? How is it that they're adding more demands on me? And it's, again, clear communication would allow us to give people the heads up. Hey, I need space, I need time, whatever it is that you need. But it's about that clear communication when you set boundaries. That's what that's about.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't expect other people to be mind readers or to know, right, what your real situation is if you don't express it, if you're not honest with yourself and others about your need to say no. And that's
Yeah,
challenging. It really is challenging. But
it
let's go ahead, Maria.
I understand that it's challenging, but I also, speaking with my clients, I understand that one of the biggest issues that is unraveling their relationships is the fact that they're not communicating. They're not expressing, you know, and not they're not expressing what they need, and they're not setting clear boundaries for what is acceptable and not acceptable. So if it's helpful to speak, and to speak before you're angry, before you're resentful. And that's one of the things that would help the relationship. It's just clear communication.
Yeah, and when I say it's challenging, what I mean is that you might need some support in order to get you to feel ready to have that level of clarity in your communication.
Mhm.
So let's talk about how you know it's time for a boundary. Some warning signs. Maybe you're feeling drained, resentful, anxious, or like you're always last on your own list. If you notice yourself dreading certain people, tasks, or conversations, that's a signal. And your body often knows before your mind does. So pay attention to that tightening in your chest, maybe a clenching of the fist, that pit in your stomach. Those feelings aren't weakness, they're wisdom. They're your system asking for protection.
Yes, and the thing here is that psychological safety, that feeling that you're going to get kicked out of the group or your relationship or whatever networking that you're doing, whatever the relationship is. And I personally, when when I'm starting to feel, um, that I've said yes too often, my body really just starts to signal exhaustion, and I just get so tired when I haven't been able to say no when I should have said no. And so for me, that's a clear signal, just feeling so tired. And it used to happen a lot more often when I didn't say no at all. And I would just feel exhausted and had a little resentment at the end of the week because I said yes to all these engagements, and I really needed to say no. And I think it's important, to understand if you're feeling exhausted like I was, then maybe you need to start saying no to certain things or to certain people.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're definitely going to be talking, diving deep into that, I think in the next segment. But it is a skill that we can all develop. And I, like you, I have been a yes person, a people pleaser, going along to get along, not wanting to offend or hurt anyone's feelings. And so, saying yes to things that really just, were not a match, not in alignment with, you know, my value of time. And it's like I said, it's a skill that we can all develop, and stop saying yes out of a sense of obligation. um,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, and there's some affirmations that you can use. So when you do notice those signals, start with mindful reflection and ask yourself, oh, where am I saying yes when I really want to say no? Where I really need to say no? What do I need more of? Or maybe what do I need less of right now? And an affirmation can help rewire that old story, these old habits that you have. And you can try, it's just a handful of example phrases that maybe you like one, you can use it. It's safe to have needs. My boundaries make space for real connection. I can care for others without abandoning myself. And then, also if you start journaling, and really it's so fantastic. Journaling, the reports show that when you journal, you allow your emotional mind, your amygdala, to start syncing with that prefrontal cortex, the reasoning mind. So when you write down, specifically if you're writing down, not so much with the computer, but when you're writing, it starts to sync, and that helps you tremendously. And of course, meditation, or simply, pausing to check in with yourself, can help you get clear on what boundaries you need.
Yeah. The act of self-reflection is a fantastic tool to use for clarity, and to, see where you're dishonoring yourself because you're not setting a boundary. This is something that many of us do, but it can be corrected. And we can come to the realization that caring for ourselves does not automatically mean that we're going to be left behind, that we're going to be abandoned. And it's important to recognize that those ideas, those beliefs got tangled in with our behavior as children, but we can untether ourselves from all of that.
Yes, and I like what you said about dishonoring ourselves, because I feel like so many people speak about having self-respect and self-confidence. And when you start to exercise boundaries, if you start using boundaries, you'll notice that you gain more self-respect because you're taking care of yourself. You gain more self-confidence because you realize that the internal validation is greater than any external validation that you can actually get. Because if you don't feel like you can count on yourself, then it's not the people that you feel you can count on, it's not as significant. We need to be able to count on ourselves. And when we have boundaries, like, like Lourdes says, you're no longer dishonoring yourself. You're showing yourself self-respect. And I think that that's truly important if you feel that you lack confidence or you feel that you're not getting what you need.
Yeah, great point, Maria. So, this week, notice one moment when you feel drained or resentful and ask yourself, what boundary is missing here? And remember, boundaries are not selfish, they're self respect in action and the foundation for healthy, honest relationships. If you're ready to build boundaries that feel good, not guilt ridden, reach out. Let's have a conversation. No pressure, just clarity.
And for more wisdom and resources to architect your own transformation, look for our book, A Path to Resilience, Small Steps to an Unshakable You. It blends mindfulness, the concepts of modern psychology, and Stoicism. It's a year-long companion that imparts daily guidance based on values of wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. And it's now available everywhere online where you can buy books. And we just want to always take this moment to say thank you to everyone who's already purchased the book and who's left a review. We really are immensely grateful to you. We appreciate it. And if you haven't left a review, please do so. This really helps us reach more people who can benefit from these concepts.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. We're walking this path right alongside you. Take care of your heart, take care of your mind, take care of yourself. If this episode resonated with you, like, follow, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs a reminder that they're stronger than they think they are. We'll see you next time where we'll dive into the art of saying no.